Hola, buenos días. Soy Alessia. Es a placer estar aquí. Hello, everybody. I'm Alessia. I'm very glad to be here. So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Depends when are you watching to this video. I'm Alessia from University College Dublin, and today I'm here to talk about how we can use R as a good instrument to predict the overtourism in a city. So we can combine text analysis and forecasting in such a way that we can create some important indicators which are helpful for policymakers to create planning for dealing with overtourism. So you can imagine how you can combine in this example text analysis, econometrics, forecasting, and also you can create something which is very helpful for the environmental to avoid the overtourism. As I said, I'm Alessia, and unfortunately, I'm not an expert about a smart city, but I'm an econometrician. And I'm very curious about how we can apply econometrics. And for this reason, when they asked me to prepare a lecture for this workshop, I decided to combine two aspects that I like in my research, forecasting and test analysis. If you're curious about myself, you can browse my website and you can find that I'm an econometrician applied to macroeconomics and sometimes to finance. I work extensively on forecasting and on shock identification. I estimated macroeconomic models. I work a lot about monetary policy, but this time is the first time where I try to apply machine learning, test analysis, econometrics, and forecasting for something that is not related to macroeconomics, and in particular is something relating to environmental, smart city. And it was very funny. This is an example, so first disclaimer, is just an empirical example, which is very educational, but I found out that this example could be also very helpful for policymakers, and you will see why. In this workshop, we are talking about the smart city. We are talking about how artificial intelligence and in particular big data could be very helpful to help people to live in a better world. So we know nowadays how there are a lot of discussion about the fears and challenges of artificial intelligence. And I think, in my opinion, that artificial intelligence could be a good instrument if we are able to use in a good way. It's like R, I mean, it's an instrument and is very helpful to help people to understand and to improve the sustainability. And in particular in this exercise, we would like to improve inclusiveness and sustainability. So when I decide to design today's lecture, I start to think what I can do. I mean, I work in forecasting. We can create something that is helpful to planners to forecast, to predict something. And I was thinking about a very crucial aspect, a topic of nowadays life, the overtourism. So I'm a passionate tourist. I love traveling. Unfortunately, I've never been to Brazil, but I hope to visit Brazil as soon as possible. When I travel, I always think myself if I create what is called the tourism, because nowadays there are a lot of discussion about this problem. And in particular, if you go to some some cities. I can imagine the same in Rio de Janeiro, but for example, in Europe, we have a lot of issues in cities like Barcelona, Venice, Rome, or for example, if we would like to go to Tokyo in Japan, there are a lot of trends to visit some specific city. Thanks to social media. If you open social media, there are travel influencers, travel bloggers suggest you to go to some specific city. And sometimes we feel that people decide to go to some specific city because it's trendy, because everybody goes there, everybody would like to visit the same city in the same period. Think about the cherry blossom period in Japan, March, April, make Japan overcrowded. I had a lot of friends visit this city in this period, and they told me that there were people everywhere. I went to Japan several years ago before the pandemic, and honestly, it was not so overcrowded because now it's a little bit trendy. I have been recently to Rome, and honestly, to take a picture in front of Fountain Trevi, it was challenging. I mean, honestly, it was always challenging. I mean, I have been to Rome several times. I'm Italian, as you can recognize from my name and surname. And honestly, I always thought to take a decent picture in front of monuments in Rome. And there is over-tourism everywhere. And think about what's going on recently in Venice, where the authorities decide to introduce a local tax if you decide not to stay overnight. For example, if you decide to visit Venice just in a day trip. But it was quite impossible to avoid people to visit Venice because who cares if you have to pay to visit Venice? People decide to go in any case. So you say that it's a problem for the sustainability. I mean, we cannot say in this place, okay, you cannot go to this city because everybody go, because it's a right to everybody to visit everywhere. But we would like to help authority to understand the over-tourism, understand if it's possible to plan the tourism in such a way that people can visit the city, for example, during all the year, not in the same period. That could be an important aspect. And about over-tourism, we know that there are a lot of discussions. So in these slides, I try to put something that is very interesting, how it's possible to help local authority. And for example, I got this example from news I have read and watched on TV, on social media about the recent concert organized in Rio de Janeiro, the recent concert by Lady Gaga. Authority organized this concert every year to incentivize tourism in this period, which is not so overcrowded like other periods during the year. And I think that this idea was very clever and very smart. So how we can help authority in other city to improve this aspect? So in this exercise, I'm going to show you in a few minutes with code. We would like to create a buzz index. So what is it, a buzz index? In marketing, buzz index is an indicator which is very helpful to quantify the volume and sometimes the tone of conversation of attention a subject is receiving often in real time. So it's something like indicator that is useful to understand the preference of an object, in this case a preference for a city. So how we can make? So we can decide to collect online data. So we can decide to, for example, consider Google Trends, or we can go on social media. So here in the slide, I just realized that I use Twitter, but it's X nowadays, or we can use Instagram or TikTok or Blue Sky, for example. So we see a lot of social media, which are a good source of big data in this sense. So in this data collection, you need to keep in mind that the use is the text mining. So you apply text mining and sentiment analysis in R, And you can create a monthly bus index, for example. I just say monthly, but it could be, for example, at a daily, weekly level or a quarterly level. So you can decide, it depends on the collection of your data. So in this moment, you have your indicator about the trend, the preference of people about a specific place, a specific destination. In our example in R, we are going to consider Barcelona. But you can, for example, use Rio de Janeiro, Venice, Tokyo, New York, Los Angeles, any other city. And you can merge your data with the tourism data. So in this exercise, honestly, I cheated and I generate artificially the tourism data because it was very hard to have tourism data from the Barcelona for the Catalan tourism office. But if you are more successful than I was successful in this exercise, you can have tourism data and you can merge your data. So now you have your data set. What you can do? You can decide to forecast the trend about the over-tourism. And you can decide to use, for example, a time series model to forecast. You can use ARIMA model, autoregressive integrated moving average model. So in this sense, you can consider an Armax model because your bus is an external regressor, and you can have this information, your prediction, in the sense that is useful to understand what's going on about the future, and you can give some suggestion to the policymaker in this sense. So here about the model you can use in terms of forecasting is up to you. I mean, in this exercise, I just use a very, very easy model, ARIMA. Okay, so if you are, for example, a supporter of machine learning models such as lasso ridge regression, you can use this model. Or you can use a very plain model like the naive forecaster, like the random walk, you can do it. Or you can use a very fancy model like a vector autoregressive. So any model that is related to time series in terms of forecasting, it could be a good model. And after that, I mean, in this exercise, because it's a very limited time period, I just show you the package about the forecast, but you can improve, you can enrich your analysis with a statistical evaluation of your forecast. That could be very helpful, and in particular, if you would like to give some statistical sense of your exercise. So now, are you ready to enter magic word of R? I suppose yes, you are here for this moment. So the code is very, very easy. I mean, just a few lines, but it's very powerful, as you will see at the end. So you upload some library, and the most important is the one about Google Trend and the forecast, and the other are library for the structure of data. So the first step is to get your Google Trend. So you can decide to use a specific keyword. So here I just use Barcelona travel, but you can use Barcelona visit, Barcelona city, so any word that could be helpful to understand that we are talking about a specific tourism destination. So you clean your data and you create your buzz indicator. And you can make a plot with a ggplot. So very easy stuff. And you can get your fancy plot. I mean, here I just make a very old school plot in R, as you can realize, so you can improve the plot with their features. And what we can do. Now, as I said, we create our bus index. So what we can learn? So we can learn that during the pandemic restriction, the search of Barcelona travel was very, very low. And after, so let's start at the end of 2021, so in particular with explosion of 2022, after release of a restriction in Europe, but in general at worldwide, we see that there was a search of Barcelona as a potential destination. We have a very increase, and nowadays this trend is very stable. So now we can consider the tourism data. Okay, if you don't have just for exercise, but of course, you cannot cheat using this data if you would like to give a policy suggestion, for example, just for educational purpose. So here I generate some time series to create this tourism data time series. And I use this time series to feed the ARIMA code to forecast. So I estimate my model, and I consider the bus index as an external regressor. So I forecast the next 12 months, assuming a flat box, and I create a plot. So this is my final result. So here we have the Overtourism score for my period by using the Google Trend, and I consider the forecast with a confidence interval. So now by using your forecast package, you can improve the Estatistica. You can, for example, compare two models, or you can estimate with a more dynamic setup, or you change the window of period. So you can make a better analysis. But this is a broad idea how you can combine the Google Trend test analysis with a forecast to create this result. So in these terms, we can say that the bus index can improve the forecasting accuracy, and in particular, it could be a very helpful instrument to identify the peak periods, and in particular to improve the city planner in terms of tourism. And it could be a very helpful indicator for a smart city, and you can, for example, use this one to create the dashboard for the policy simulation to create some impact metrics. So far, thanks very much for your attention. So in the last few minutes, I will share my screen in our studio to show you how it works. So be patient for some second. So this is my art studio. So you see, I just copy the code, and I select the first part where I get the first plot. I run my code, and I can get my bus trend. So here, if you're curious, you can have a look of your data of a bus index for the period. So you see your time series and this sense. So we have around 60 observation, 61 precisely. And after that, I create my data, and I make my forecast. So let's run the second part of my code. So we have a final plot with a forecast. So if you're curious, you can have a look of information about the forecast of your regression. So you have the bus data, the forecast series, here the Google Trend data. So here you will have all information of Google Trend and exploring your data. So let me show you. So over tourism score data. So this is the data that we generate artificially over tourism. So the bus index is coming from the Google Trend. Over tourism is the one that I generate artificially, considering the data that I have. But of course, if you have opportunity to have real data, you can combine your Google Trend analysis with this data that you have from the statistical office. And as I say, this one is just an idea how you can use R, combining text analysis, forecasting to provide a very smart and clever instrument to help city planner in terms of over tourism. And I think that it could be a very promising starting point to create a dashboard, to create some other indicators in such a way that we can use big data and R and of course econometrics and forecasting to help people to live in a better world. So thanks so very much for listening to me. So I just waited for you in our meeting session during the workshop for chatting about this code and to share your opinion and your ideas about how you can use big data, text analysis, and forecasting to improve the environment. So thanks again. Have a lovely day. Bye bye to everybody.